so much, Myra, for being with us. I am very grateful to have you here, someone who has embodied Ayurveda and yoga for decades now and has immense wisdom around this topic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for making the movie because we need to get this great information out to people. So,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and Myra is an Ayurvedic practitioner and also an Ayurveda yoga therapist. She's a professional member of the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, same as me. I was on the board actually for 3 years. And so it's a wonderful organization that's helping to help the cause of Ayurveda in America. Myra has also amassed more than 100,000 hours of yoga teaching. That's 100,000. And it's been spanning across the last 30 years. So again, thank you so much for being here. And today's topic is going to be about agni and the mind. One more thing before we jump to agni and the mind is that Myra owns an amazing center in Hawaii. And I think it's just beautiful. I haven't been there yet, but I'm so excited to actually try and make it out there. So yeah, that I can't wait. And so today's topic reminds me of, we were exchanging some notes before this call and what are we going to talk about? And one of the things for me that I felt when I was going through my illness was, yes, in my gut, I had celiac disease. So that was causing a major imbalance in my stomach and my intestines and my colon and my whole entire intestinal, kind of digestive tract. So much so that I ended up getting ulcers and all my blood numbers and charts of cholesterol and diabetes and everything was kind of just all over the place. And as many of you have seen the movie, that was my journey. And that's what led me to create the movie and to create this summit that we're now on. And, when my gut started getting healthier, when I finally figured out, I feel like it was like my mind just became sharper and I could remember things again. And, and the more that started happening, like I didn't have brain fog anymore. And I was like, oh my God. And I could not be as mean to people. I'd hate to say it, but I was mean to people when I was in pain. And so there's things that you don't realize that happen that you tend to normalize when you're sick. And so that it's some of the root cause of that is digestion and agni and how that relates to your mind. And, depression and things like that would come up for me, even suicidal thoughts. And I'm like, where are these coming from? There's and I knew that my gut was all over the place. My gut would hurt every single day and I would have migraines and obviously I was in pain. But can we dive into that a little bit, Myra? I want to know, like, how does our state of our agni and the digestive fire, first, let's start there. What is digestive fire and how does that affect our minds?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, agni then is the root of life. It's the body, the senses, and the mind. It's all together. It's not separable. And we've been taught to think of it separately. We have separate words for it. So you could think of it as a component of the mind. We have our five senses, right? The indriyas, and there's an agni there, and there has to be a shift. There has to be a shift in that how that agni is functioning in order to have healing. So you can see, that's what creates a shift of perspective. Now there are 40 types of agni, you could say, on the cellular level, but what we call the Jataragni is the one that's related to the digestion of food and the digestion of life.
So there's 40 types of agni at the cellular level. How? Like, how did they know this? And it's so fascinating. And all 40 of those are like enzymatic reactions, or like, what is kind of happening at the agni level? I'm curious, just because for my personal wisdom, and also just for the users out there, like the people watchers, the viewers that are out there.
Well, if we speak about it, let's speak about just the Jataragni and the digestive tract. here's an example. So if you have something in life that you come across and you get really uptight about it, yeah, and your body tenses up. Well, what do you think is happening on the cellular level? They're contracting, and if you think of it sort of like a campfire, if that campfire doesn't have enough space and air to function, then it will contract, and it will. Yeah, so I think that's a really simple way to look at it, and I like to look at things on that practical, functional level, because that's what most people can relate to, and sometimes we don't need to know all these names, the details, yeah, because we need to see, how am I going to get this functioning again? So if then, for example, you do a yoga nidra, or you go to the beach and lay on the beach and relax for a few minutes, right? The body starts to relax, hopefully. The mind will start to relax. Yeah. And then of course there's that other way of going about it, which is sometimes people will use substances and they try to relax and soften things from the outside, and then it seems to work for a couple of minutes, maybe, and then and then something else happens, right? So you can see. I mean, if we start to pay attention to life, then we can see how it's all connected, and and if I'm emotionally really disturbed about something, right? I'm not going to digest my food well, and vice versa, right? If I eat really bad food, then I feel terrible afterwards, and then I'm grumpy. I don't function as well. So just making those connections is really a good first place to start, and also to recognize that the body is to a certain degree, the body is just a manifestation of what the mind is telling it.
I truly believe that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
powerful that when we think that we are what we think we are, and we become that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
so powerful.
exactly. Yeah.
What are like the what when agni gets thrown off, like you said, and in particular perhaps the digestive one in my case. Um, what are like the different stages or conditions of agni that we can look for if something like that is happening?
Hmm. Yeah, and sometimes you'll see this. People say there's four types of agni, and it's not a type. Because again, the mind, we like to put things in a box and say it's this, yeah, it's this or it's that, and actually these are just conditions, and any of us can have any of these conditions. So
Mm,
there's something called sam agni, which is a balanced agni. This is when we're conducting life and we have no symptoms. And then sometimes, maybe if you, there's something called Tikshna Agni, which is it's gotten a little too hot. So this is when you eat a meal, and an hour later you're starving, or if you don't get to eat within 10 minutes of feeling hungry, then and you're going to bite somebody's head off. It's Tikshna Agni. Yeah, so it's too hot. And then there's something called Mandagni, which is when the Agni is quite slow. And this is just where you eat, it feels pretty good, but then 4 hours later it's still there, and then, it just, things
mm,
have not moved. So it's just slow. And then there's Vishmagni, and Vishmagni is irregular, meaning sometimes it's really slow, and then other times it feels like it's too hot and you want to kill somebody if you don't eat. So these are loosely associated
that's very
with.
interesting.
Yes, yeah, they're loosely associated with the doshas, but we have to be careful with that, because it's just a tendency. So, for example, people with a lot of vata in the constitution will have more
Mm,
tendency toward Vishma Agni, and it's like that. But any one of us can have any of these conditions at any point in time and pass
mm.
through them, and mm, sometimes they stay that way for a long period of time, and perhaps you've experienced some of that variation yourself.
Definitely have, yeah. I've definitely experienced like, fast movement, slow movement. Sometimes it feels like you said, like stuck. Like, oh man, why do I feel bloated, or like something is in there still, right? It's like, Yeah,
Hmm.
so I totally get what you're saying, and that's a beautiful thing about Ayurveda that, and generally speaking, in Sanskrit language, it's explained with characteristics and not really like labeling things as they are, like in a box,
Hmm.
like you mentioned. It's like a physical force or like physics to some extent.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So what's compromising people like in today's world? What's causing our agnis to get out of whack or go in one direction versus another and not just staying balanced?
Right. Well, it's a significantly imbalanced diet and lifestyle, and such that we're continually seeking to satisfy the sense pleasures. To looking on the outside for things. We can also say that seasonal change has some effect also, but honestly, it's quite small compared to the others. But the imbalanced diet is. I've been around long enough that I've watched this all get much worse over time as more fads came out and as the internet came out. Then people were more readily exposed to these various ones. I heard about a new diet yesterday. Oh my!
Hmm.
And it's like a ping pong ball. Oh well, let's have no grains, and no, now let's have only grains and things like that. But the other piece of it though that
Hmm.
goes along with all of this, which is the I mentioned about not digesting life, and this is unresolved
Hmm.
emotions, because that will impair the function of agni. And when agni doesn't function well that way, again, the mind is disrupted. So these are the things that people are suffering
Is
with
that
the
like
most.
traumatic events maybe when you're
Yeah.
younger and
It can
okay.
be, it can be some big traumatic event, but it can also be the things, and this is just, it's part of the human experience, is that, you could be 5 years old and you have an experience. And if you don't have, if there's not real open discussion, there's not a spiritual basis in the home, then a 5 year old's going to make a decision about that.
Hmm.
And sometimes 5 year olds don't have the best perspective on life at
Sure.
that point. And
Sure.
so we make these decisions, and then we start behaving from that decision.
Hmm.
And that's part of the process of emotionally maturing in life.
Sure.
But the more not only we're able uh, to process life as we go along. The other thing is that children these days are being being given the wrong food too early, and agni doesn't have a proper time frame to develop, and so
Hmm.
this affects everything else too. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So that would affect you your whole life then, just because of what that. Okay,
Yes.
and it's
Mhm.
repairable using Ayurveda to turn that agni kind of back on, though, right? And kind of rekindle it and
Totally, totally, it totally is. And so many people I've worked with, they say, "Well, I've had that all my life." Oh, well, I was born with that. And I say, "Well, that's okay, but do you want to keep it?" Because what we're born with, and particularly these days, is what happened at conception, what mom and dad offered, right? And then what mom was exposed to. And so all of those are factors. And a lot of those things, most of them, are reversible. They're not things that have to stay with us. We're changing every day. I mean, every day we change inside. To some degree, we change on the outside. Yeah.